So in the sound seat today, we have a phenomenal guest, Thati Pele, a visionary director at Patriot Films. Her portfolio spans commercials for top brands as well as acclaimed Netflix series like Blood and Water and Savage Beauty. Thati is a master of storytelling. Welcome to the sound seat.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start sort of basically at the beginning and just ask what initially sparked your interest in filmmaking and how did your journey lead you to directing commercials?
Wow, it's a bit of a weird sort of journey. I think I've always gravitated towards film in general, but having grown up in an environment where I wasn't really exposed to how creatives work. You know, like my dad was a doctor, my mom initially was a stay-at-home mom, and then she began to work in finance. There wasn't really like a sense of creative people. So my first real exposure to film came about in university when I was studying business science.
Wow.
When I was studying economics and statistics, and I was like, oh, this is actually the only way, because is there really another way? And I needed a part-time job. And my mom knew someone who's like, just contact this woman. She's a producer. And I'm like, me really not knowing what this was. I was like, of what? And she's like, oh, no. And I get there and I was her PA. And it was actually a terrible experience, to be honest. Because I think film, especially film back in like the 2000s, early mid-2000s in SA was really rough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like quite a hardcore, very militaristic sort of drive towards it. So, and I just like with my soft Joburg self, I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So I just left it. I was like, you know, it's really fun and I really enjoyed. And it was the first time I really felt a spark of something, because my studies to the point were just like, I just did them to do it.
Yeah.
And I watched movies like most normal people. It wasn't like I used to consume them. So there wasn't really the idea that, okay, maybe this is something that you could do. Until I took a gap year after varsity and I moved to South Korea.
Okay.
And sorry, I know this is very roundabout.
No, please. This is the whole point of this podcast, is to like tell us the journey and see all of the things that happen.
It's a very roundabout.
Yeah.
And I think this is film, because as I've discovered with the films that I like, they're actually quite rambling and beautiful, like a Pichatpong sort of work. But so I get to South Korea, and I had gone there specifically to run away from the job that I'd just gotten. So my mother was just like, you're crazy. Yeah. Like, kids are dying to get work. You are asking them to give you a leave of absence for a year. And I was like, please, I just really need it. I've done everything you've asked me to do.
Yes.
I went to high school, I got the distinctions. I went to the university, I got the scholarship. Like, please, let me just do it. So I went to South Korea and I taught English at an English amusement park, which basically means that people come in for a day. It's really genius.
Yes.
People coming for a day, and in the park, they're stationed different people from around the world. And there are also basic places that you can go to, like the bakery, the pub, the restaurant, and you have to speak English. So it's an English conversation theme park.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great. It's
genius.
Yes, it's called English Village, which is really fun. And when I was there, I was just like random. It was fun. It was great. And it was nice. I got to see a lot of Korean cinema. But I bumped into this woman who was like, we're looking to cast somebody in our movie and we'd really like you to come. And I was like, no, thank you. You know, just thinking of the experience that I had, I was like, no, thank you. I don't think so. And she came back. She's like, we really need you. I'm like, I'm guessing you need a Black person because you keep coming back to me.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, let's go and see what's going on here. And my friends were with me because I was like, this might be dodgy.
Yeah.
And we go, and it's this massive movie set. And it is so cool. And I was like, is this what a legit movie set looks like? Because I've been on like really small commercials before in Cape Town, and normally in the back of a truck, you know, like gophering for this and that. And I was like, this is so cool. I just got like goosebumps. I was like, oh, this is incredible. And then I got to sit with the director, and I could see that one of my Korean friends was like silently losing her shit. And I was like, this person must be a big deal. And we got out of there, and he was just like a huge deal director. He made one of my favorite movies,
Yeah.
Old
Which one?
Boy.
Okay.
And I was like, this is crazy. So I was like, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it if I can just like shadow the director for half a day. And they said, cool. And I was like, okay. And that experience of really being on a film set, like I know a lot of people are like, I saw this movie and I thought it was incredible. But when you don't see it, when you don't know what it is,
Yeah.
it's really hard to explain to anyone. At least it was hard for me to see it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people just have like the impetus, but that just like brought it to life for me. And I asked him, I was like, why don't more people do this? He's like, I don't know. He's like, maybe you should go to film school. I was like, okay, I'll go to film school. And that was it. I went to film school, and yeah, it was great.
Look, that's such an incredible story.
It was great.
It's like one of those real fairy tale stories.
Yeah, it was.
It really is.
It was. And it's funny. I tell it because even telling it now, I'm like, okay, I've told this before, but every time I think of it, when it gets really tough at work, I'm like, the way that you got into this though feels so special.
Yeah.
There was some sort of synchronicity about it. And the fact that I got to go to the film school that I wanted to go to with the scholarship and the people that I got to meet, there was just something about it. So even moments when I'm like, I could have been a dentist. It would have been a lot simpler. No one would talk to me. I'd have my own practice.
Totally. But I mean, can you imagine? You're looking at bad teeth, bad breath.
I don't mind.
And now, look at this. I think it's so magical. And also, like, so brave as well to have studied and then taken this gap year and then been like, I'm going to go back and study.
Yeah.
How did your parents feel about that? Also, a completely a sort of a space where they wouldn't have known what it meant. I mean, I used to work in radio, and I still am slightly unsure if my mother knew exactly what I was doing, and other than like talking nonsense. But there's other stuff behind the scenes.
There's also their fear for you, and I guess it's warranted in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
When they're just like, but what is the world going to do to you?
Yeah.
What if this thing is unkind to you? And I had to, and maybe it wasn't that I had to, but I was, mid-20s. There was a part of my brain that hadn't developed as yet.
Yes.
And I was like, I fear nothing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go. And if it doesn't work out, I've got this degree. You asked me to get it. And I'll come back.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal.
I think there's also a fear in parents, especially when they have specific careers, say for instance a business career or a doctor, etc., about the arts.
Yeah.
There's just this massive fear of your kids landing up eating 2-minute noodles and homeless or whatever the case is, because is there going to be work? What is this space? What is this? I mean, there's so many of these things that people think of in that moment.
Yeah. And I think my mom is, because my mom was really the person that I feel, I mean, I love my dad. He passed, rest his soul. But my mom is the person who really raised me.
Yeah.
And my mom is just like quite a hardcore spiritual woman. She's asked me not to call her religious anymore.
Okay.
But like quite hardcore in that sense. Like everything is led through prayer and thought and, a lot of emotion. So I think when she saw in me the fact that I was going to go, she's like, I'm not going to change your mind.
Yeah.
All I'm going to do is pray for you, and then we'll hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so incredible. And also so grateful. That she...
Yeah.
Like,
because she could have been like, you've got that job. She could have like rolled on the floor and like made it terrible.
Yeah.
She's like, I either don't support you and will probably not speak again, or I support you and I'm afraid for you, but you go for it.
Yeah.
So just go for it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the fact that you've done long form and you've done commercials.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process of the two of them, and how different the two of them are. I know it's quite a big, broad question.
No,
but
not at all. I think, initially I was very much of the school of thought that a good director can direct anything. And I still believe that fundamentally. But the way in which you approach your work for both really depends on what you feel that you are not suited to, but I think like you've got a better handle of, like there's an ease that you have. Like in anyone's career, there's something that you do really easily.
Yeah.
And there's something else that you do that requires a little bit more focus and attention. And for me, it's been like one or the other with commercials or with long form. Like sometimes commercials will really stretch me and the process is different.
Yeah.
And sometimes long form will really stretch me and the process is different. But it's the same in the sense that it requires a lot of research in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of understanding of your subject matter. And even, it's funny, even like a toilet paper commercial still has subject matter.
Yes.
Is it humorous?
Yeah.
Is it dark? Is it a spoof? I keep thinking humor with toilet paper because I can't really see it being sold. Is it a dog? Do you know what I mean? I need to know about this so that I can feel better. I can feel like I'm suiting up a bit more. And then equally with long form. And then once you get the research done, once I understand my characters, because even in commercials, they're characters.
Yeah.
Once I understand like their why, then I can start to layer up in the different processes. In commercials, it's really about, at least for me, because I also used to, in my little brief stint when I came back from South Korea, I worked for a little while in the place that I was meant to go to. I won't name it in case. And I was an assistant brand manager. And the main thing really about a commercial is selling the brand.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're doing. And you have to be okay with that in a sense. Because you have to be okay with it in a sense of, as much as you creatively would really like to dig in, if you can't collaborate and get the story across for the brand, you've actually not done your job.
100%.
Like it's not done.
Yeah.
Whereas in long form, you've got this sense of, I really need to dig into these characters. And I need to draw as much out of the story as much as possible. And it's kind of never ending well. Like somebody could stop you and be like, that's not where we think we're going. The showrunner could do that. But you as the director really have a lot of agency to just go in and be like, let's go, let's try, let's explore. You don't have that time in commercials.
Yeah.
You don't have that, let me say, that emotional luxury
Yeah.
as well. So the processes can feel quite different in that sense.
Because at the end of the day, as the long form, you're getting to know a character. You've got time for that character to grow. So you like in that sense, but you've got like a 30-second or 60, and you've got to develop that character plus tell the story and all of that. And you like looking at the brand. And I suppose having worked as an assistant brand for assistant brand marketing that you did, it was probably also the synchronicity and the fact that you then have that perspective, which is really great.
Which was good and bad because I suppose I had to get rid of my corporate clinical view when I was looking at a commercial and just make it fun and direct it. Like I'm quite an organized person and sometimes I had to be a little disorganized, which discombobulated me. But to your point about the character, it's funny in a commercial, your character is often the thing that really stands out. Like you remember this person, the way that they look, what were they doing? Do they relate to you? You almost have to have all of those symbols match up really quickly as soon as you see this character, what they're wearing, how their hair is, how tall are they slouching? How did they walk into a room? It's like... for lack of a better character, just thinking about walking into a room, Kramer in Seinfeld, immediately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a commercial.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the beauty of it as well. I'm just like, boom, oh, I know this guy.
Yeah.
I know who he is.
Yeah.
There's a shorthand to it you have to establish.
And also, we've changed over the years. So now we're consuming content at a much faster rate. So if something doesn't grab you within the 3 seconds, I mean, we used to sit and watch TV And we would sit there, we would sit through the commercials because we couldn't fast forward through them. The commercials were way longer.
Yeah.
You had way more time.
Yeah.
So it's that immediate Kramer
immediate.
sliding into that door.
Yeah.
Bam, I've got him.
You need to know exactly who your character is. So in the sense, sorry, just to go back to your original question, process-wise, it's kind of the same. It's just like, what is your output?
Yeah.
And you have to really remember that. Like, your job as the director is to steer the ship. Like, someone in the ship might be like, I just want to stop at this island. We're like, we're not going to Mauritius.
Yeah.
You know, we're going somewhere else. We're going to Zanzibar.
Okay.
We can't make detours.
Yes.
This is where we're going to.
Yeah.
You have to keep people on track, and you have to keep yourself and the story, really importantly, on track. And there's just different ways of doing that. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the pitching process as a director, because I'm not sure if a lot of people know how it all works.
Yeah.
That just take us through that process of perhaps the idea from where does it come from agency, etc., and then how you work on that pitch.
So I guess the very beginning is an insight. And that would be from the marketer's perspective. People like soap that smells like tangerines. Oh, great. Okay. Then the marketer goes to their agency and they're like, I have this insight. People like soap that smells like tangerines. How am I going to sell it? And they're like, maybe we can make a tangerine man and make it like live in a tangerine world. And then once it's with the agency and they've got a lot of back and forths with their client, they've got this tangerine world that's established, maybe it turns into a tangerine superhero lady. And then it comes to deciding on the director and often the company that would be good for that. And it's really a creative decision. It's about who creatives know, who they're comfortable with working with. Are they comfortable with going outside of the box a bit? Some creatives work with the same director. Some creatives work with lots of different directors. It's up to them. Then they find the 3 people who they want to pitch. And then we get called in. So I sit down as a director in front of the agency and they say, we've created a tangerine superhero for soap because the insight is that people like tangerine soap and it'll sell more. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I think about things like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Where do I go to with it? How do I really immerse myself in this world? And at the end of the brief, I'll be asking lots of questions. And at the end of it, what I'll get out of it is some ideas. And I'll sit down with my team and a researcher, and we'll really start to work. They'll tell us basic things that are important, like the length of the commercial, the timelines, the budget, and that will really inform a lot of the process. If it was like an open-ended commercial with a $10 million budget, or if it's a commercial that needs to be turned around in 2 weeks, with a $10 million budget, you have different decisions that you need to make, different creative decisions as well. Creatively, you really want to let yourself run free, though, because what you need to produce at the end of it is a treatment. And in this treatment, you let your ideas go, but you also think of it in terms of, well, who am I speaking to? The agency, the client, or am I speaking to myself as the viewer?
Yeah.
Because I'm also going to watch this at some point. I'd like to enjoy it as well. And you have to find a middle road, like a middle path to all of those things. So you work with your team and the researcher, you put together quite a big deck. It could be like, mine are a bit detailed. Some are detailed, some are not as detailed, but some also need different things. Like, what if my insight while I'm doing my treatment is that tangerine superheroes need sidekicks? And maybe it's a story of like how the superhero came to be.
Yeah.
And how like you will walk around stain-free because you're a tangerine superhero. And then I go off on this as close to the script as possible, but you can add in your own flair. And it's a long process. It used to be longer. I think the turnaround times for agencies have gotten a bit tighter. So what used to be like 2-3 weeks that you have sometimes turns into 4 working days, which is really brutal. Can be. And it's a shame that's the case. Like, I feel for agencies, but it's also sad because they've worked so hard to get it across the line. Give somebody time to do it justice, you know? But then when it's a little bit longer, you've got like a little bit more time to play, and then you present it to the agency, and they'll choose the best tangerine superhero treatment between you and two other directors.
Amazing. When it comes to that treatment, let's chat about audio side of things. Are you quite big on the audio side in terms of not only music, but also like the sound it's going to be, the sound design, etc.?
Yeah.
Tell us about a little bit about that process.
I mean, it's funny for me, like music and sound, it's just like, it feels like the subconscious of the piece. It's really important. And I think it's because also my training really was in like long form. So I always think about, what does this sound like? Where am I? But what happens on a practical perspective in a lot of instances is that you will think about the sound that you're leading in with. And then the editor will have input in the sound.
Yeah.
And then the creative team will have input in the sound. And then it'll come down to like whether this really works. So there's a lot of input that goes into it. Because often sound ends up being quite an expensive conversation as well.
Yes.
If I want to create something, and you might have champagne tastes and Coca-Cola pockets, and that's just the day that you've got. But sound is it's a very important thing to at least start thinking about, so that you can direct the path of what it's going to look like. I had this lecturer in varsity who's quite like like a curmudgeon. When someone takes on a persona and you're like, but you're not really like this. And he's just like, you are all bullshit. And we're like, thank you. And he's just like, you don't understand music. You don't understand love. You don't understand anything. You speak in straight lines. You scroll on straight phones. You don't get anything. You need to inject jazz and life into your life. And that is music. So we were like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So he often made us do sound exercises where you wouldn't film anything. You would just listen to the sound and then put together visuals.
Okay.
Put together pieces. He was just like, you need to open up to the world of sound. So I've been very fortunate in that sense. Yeah.
Sure, that's so brilliant.
Yeah, he was really cool.
And what an amazing way to look at things, because often people audio is generally one of the last things.
Which is a shame.
It is such a shame.
Yeah.
Because it can completely change everything.
If you think of some of your favorite films, and you think of some of the character development in these films, you're just like, but this actually was the sound.
Yeah.
This is the sound that led me through this. I think of like, it's funny because Hitchcock would often say, like, if you switch the sound off, then you know how good a piece is. But he used that a lot.
Yeah.
He used that a lot as a telltale sign for when a character is walking into a room. Who is it going to be? Sometimes the sound doesn't really match the close-up even. And you're like, oh, but this is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's so important. Like a lot of artists, a lot of even like new ways of filming just start with the soundscape first. And then they go. And they go off. And people that write as well. If you look at like some movies feel like they were started with sound in mind first. Like, have you seen They Cloned Tyrone?
No.
On Netflix? It's so great. It's just such a joy. You're just like,
Making a note.
You're like, thank God. Some like modern, cool sci-fi.
Brilliant.
And you watch it and you're just like, this person really likes music.
Yeah.
You can feel that,
I mean, sometimes we watch like a movie that's very average, but the soundtrack will just stay with us forever.
You.
Yeah.
It transports you.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Her was average, but I do know that if I didn't have that weird soundscape that it had going on, that I wouldn't be as interested. Yeah. And I didn't have like the voice, like the way that her voice had been manipulated at times. I just wouldn't be as interested at all.
That's so fascinating. It's all like in our cells, basically. There's this music and these sounds and everything.
Yeah, and even if you look at like I'm going through a African director. I wouldn't say like I'm going back through a lot of their work as, in writing features. You're like, but what things have really inspired me? Like, where did I see my visuals? And I was like, but so many visuals I've seen are American. Is there nothing from where I've grown up, from the continent? And you think of like some of the soundscapes there. Like if you watch hyenas, and you're just like, this is wild. It's already a wild story.
Yes.
But you think of this like soundscape, it's like so stark. And you think of like how it came together. It's an older movie, but it just works. It comes together, And even like newer ones, like if you watch Timbuktu, it's just like the desolate nature of like the desert. And then seeing these people around and having that cow GPS, and you're like, but this all comes together because underlying this is this great soundscape. So sorry, it's a ramble, but yes, sound is very important.
It is.
Yeah.
As a director, how do you balance staying true to your creative vision while meeting client requirements, which is always very difficult?
Yeah,
obviously.
sometimes I have a little fit myself. I'm like, this is the way. And then I have to remember, like I was saying, like the purpose of this commercial is to sell something. And the person that wants to sell it is standing there in front of you saying, I want to collaborate with you and I want to sell this thing. And I'm like, okay, cool, I get it. But I want someone to feel something.
Yeah.
So let's find a middle path. And you really have to negotiate with that. You really have to be like, does this work? Does this not? It's difficult to maintain your vision a lot if you're not open to negotiation.
Yeah.
If you're not open to being wrong, because you can be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Somebody knows a product a little bit better than you. You know your characters maybe a little bit better than them. You need to find a middle ground.
All right. Over the years, have you observed increased inclusivity when gender and race is concerned? And is there hope for aspiring female directors?
Depends on which continent.
Okay. Yeah.
Here.
Yes, talk about here.
South Africa, yeah. Definitely. I think there's also such a sense of... there's also such a sense of like, this is what is happening. Whether it be from the fact that it's legislated or it be from the fact that actually as a population, we are diverse and there's so many different people from different walks of life. You are bound to meet someone who's interested in this.
Yeah.
Who's trying to come up in the ranks as well and who's going to work there, whether you like it or not. And that feels good. You're just like, oh, cool, this is happening. There's more of a sense of acceptance. And we see like a lot more inclusivity, though I suppose it feels a bit tiered, where there is like a little bit of a ceiling in terms of the types of work that people are seeing represented or helmed by different people, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But even that is changing because change is inevitable. It is the only constant in life. So it's going to happen whether people like it or not, So, yeah, I would say I have seen it.
In your view, what qualifies as a good director? You chatted about it earlier, just in terms of a good director can direct anything, but what qualifies that?
It depends on the piece of work for that director. Like, I think a good director knows how they should best adapt to the material and the material should adapt to them. You really need to know your material quite rigorously. There's some directors that are really nightmares personally to work with on a set, but they're able to get things done.
Yeah.
They're very like Kubrickian way of working and you're just like yelling at your actors and whatever. And someone could qualify that person as a good director. I feel like you might burn out a lot from that and, give yourself an aneurysm. But that's you. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know your material really well. Maybe that's how you feel that you should approach it. I don't think that's probably the best way, but that's it. But if you know your material and you're just like, I can know this material and I can really get into it and I could be wrong sometimes, but I'm probably right. and I can do that in a generous way as well, where I can also get my way, but learn something along the way. Because I think you, as a good director, you want to keep getting better. And if you keep working in a very sort of insular way that stops you from doing that because you block ideas or you block ways of working or you're quite strict about your practice, then it's not ultimately going to develop you in the way that you want to. So I think a good director just knows how to approach the material with a sense of generosity to themselves, to other people. And being generous sometimes is just saying no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being generous to you and telling you that this idea of yours is not going to work. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, or please go sit down. That's generous to someone as well.
That's such an amazing way to look at it. Last question is there a dream project?
Oh, yeah.
How many?
I mean, there's so many. But for me, it's not even like project. It's more like the dream scale of a genre.
Yeah.
You know, just being able to create a big, when I say big, I mean like well-made, well-funded, great distribution, African sci-fi.
Brilliant.
You know, it sounds like, oh, pie in the sky, but you're like, why not? That's so doable.
Yeah.
We have so much, like such rich sense of story and mythology. You know, it like sometimes gives me goosebumps when I think about it. I was just like, but this is so obvious.
Yeah.
To me, that feels like, it doesn't feel like a dream. It really is more starting to feel like a goal, something that's like keeping me up. That's like, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
For some reason, no one else feels like doing this. You've got to do, you're not going to sleep properly. Good luck to that insomnia. So yeah.
And
that's
how,
the thing.
and I mean, obviously from the directing side of things, would you want to like write the story, or would you want to make up the story, or would you want to take a piece of something that you've heard that you could then develop?
I think it's like, might be different parts of it. If we come across a really good story, it's okay to let go, as I've learned very recently in my career.
Okay.
It's okay to work as hard as possible and then let go and do what you know that you can do best. Like, I know that I'm a great writer, but I'm at this point maybe a better director. Maybe that story comes along and I'm a better writer for it than I am suited to like produce or direct it. I mean, I would never willingly give up directing. I don't want to lie.
Yeah.
But it really depends on what's best for that story. You know, I feel like we are owed, like long overdue, owed a really good African blockbuster.
Yeah.
And it needs to be damn good, you know? And you need to really be able to see it, you know, when you go into the theater, like feel it. Like for me, the first time I watched Star Wars at the cinema, when you're like, damn,
Totally.
that is damn good.
Yeah.
And not like on your screen, but like at the movies. That was wild. And that's what I want from it. Yeah.
Well, maybe
So
these sleepless nights is when you get up and write the movie, and then
It
in
has
the
been
next few years, then you're directing
Yeah,
it. So you're doing
right.
both.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so incredibly insightful. I can't wait to have you back on when you've got
Thank you.
another
It's really
project.
fun.
I feel like we could ask about letting go of certain things, but I think that there's room for us to chat again. So thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
through.
It's really fun.
Thank you.